The magazine that I've produced not only uses but develops and challenges the forms and conventions of real hip-hop genre magazines that I've analysed. For example, I've used the white sans serif font on a red background for my masthead on my front cover, page, contents and double page spread. Another convention I used was that of the Afro-Caribbean male cover artist on the front cover, which was used in real magazines such as the XXL and the Source. One more genre convention I used on my front cover, which was also used in most of my analysed magazines, was the anchored main cover line over the main image. All three of these forms and conventions were used on the front covers of all the hip-hop magazines I analysed. I also developed some of the forms and conventions of real magazines in my magazine. For example, the cover lines used on the right hand side of my front cover are similar to those of an XXL magazine I have analysed, but I have slightly developed them. I developed them by changing the style of the cover lines. For example, I used a plus sign instead of plus, the actual word. Another convention I have developed in my front cover is that of the barcode, which has the date, issue number and price on it, just like the real magazines I analysed, but I've positioned it differently in the left hand corner. As well as this, I challenged a form and convention of the real magazines I analysed when making my magazine. I have put a boost on my magazine front cover to add in more content for my magazine. This challenges the forms and conventions of real magazines, as the ones I have analysed did not have any boosts on them. I have used forms and conventions of real magazines that I've analysed on my contents page as well, such as the main image being of the same artist as the front cover, with a low angle shot being used to make this artist look bigger to the audience. This was a convention that was used in XXL magazines I analysed. Another form and convention of real hip-hop magazines that I have used is that of the size down masthead being on the page of my contents page. This was again used in the XXL magazines I analysed. One last use of forms and conventions of real magazines in my contents page is that of the website of the magazine at the bottom of the page. This was used in all of the magazines analysed to advertise the website. One form and convention from real hip-hop magazines that I've analysed that I challenged in my contents page was that of adding an extra image to the page. I used an album cover I'd created, and this was not used in any of the magazines I have analysed, as they all had one image on the contents page. I did this as I thought it would be a good idea to show the album being promoted, but one of the forms and conventions of real hip-hop magazines that I used for my double page spread was that of the text on one half of the spread and the main image taking up the rest on the other half. Another convention I used was to have the headline as the largest text on the page. This convention was used in all of the magazines I analysed. And one last use of conventions of real hip-hop magazines was to have the website of the magazine at the foot of the page to advertise the magazine website. This was used in the XXL magazines I analysed. One of the ways in which I developed the forms and conventions of the real hip-hop magazines that I analysed was that I slightly developed the bylines of the double page spread. I also slightly developed the picture credits as well. I developed them using different typography and colours. I did this as I didn't really like how they did it on the magazines I analysed, and I thought I'd put my own twist on it. I challenged the conventions of real hip-hop magazines that I analysed on my double page spread as well. An example of this would be how I used a caption, which is anchored over the image in my magazine's double page spread. I did this to link the image to the text used on the double page spread.
The hip-hop genre magazine that I've created represents a particular social group. I found this out of my planning, where I asked a focus group of 30 people of different ethnicities, ages and different music preferences. The results of my questionnaire and what I have found out from the answers helped me to determine what audience I should produce my magazine for. I found out that the majority age of 13 to 25-year-olds preferred hip-hop music, which was also a majority vote. I also found that most of the people in the group who liked this genre of music were Afro-Caribbean males. This meant that I had to include stereotypical elements of this audience in my magazine, such as on the front cover, which is of an Afro-Caribbean male who is wearing black clothes. This is stereotypical of this genre of magazine as well, which I found out of my textual analysis of hip-hop magazines. In the mise-en-scène of the main image, the artist is playing Scrabble, and I thought this was a positive representation of the stereotypical Afro-Caribbean male. I thought this would be a good idea to do, as in most of the hip-hop magazines I analysed, the artist on the front cover is represented positively. Also, the contents page and the double page spread used positive representations of the artist too. I used a low angle shot in the main image on the contents page, which shows the artist to be taller and possibly more respected. I used this technique with the image on the double page spread as well. I analysed 3 different magazine front covers, contents pages and double page spreads, 2 from XXL magazine and 1 from the Source magazine. Both of these magazines are based on the hip hop genre of music, and so is my magazine. This is why I thought it was best to use either the producers and distributors of these magazines to make and distribute mine. Harris Publications produce and distribute XXL magazine and are well recognised in the consumer magazines market, so therefore would be a good choice to distribute my magazine. The distributor of the Source magazine, L. Londell Macmillan, is a well-known entertainment attorney, so he would also be a good choice to distribute my hip-hop magazine. However, I would have to choose Harris Publications to distribute my magazine, as they are already well known in the music magazine industry and are already successful in the hip-hop genre of magazine, which is also the genre of my magazine. I already had an idea of what my target audience for my magazine would be, but to narrow it down I used a focus group of 30 people and questioned them on numerous subjects I thought would come in handy when creating my hip-hop magazine. There was 3 main criterias that I had to find out first of all. They were age, gender and ethnicity. I asked for their age and the majority result was 13 to 25 years old. The most common ethnicity was Afro-Caribbean, followed by white British, and I knew the majority gender of the group was male. I also found out that this target audience favoured the hip-hop genre, which is what I wanted to base my magazine on. There was a gap in the market for this sort of magazine. This was shown by the majority of the focus group not reading many hip-hop magazines and preferring the indie genre of music, such as Q or NME magazines. By this point of the focus group questionnaire, I had found out what my target audience was, and that was the teenage Afro-Caribbean male who liked the hip-hop genre of music in England or America.
I used the focus group to find out how to attract and address the audience as well. For example, when I asked what sort of typography I should use, a sans serif font was by far the majority answer, so this is what I used in my hip-hop magazine. Also, I asked why the focus group reads magazines. There was a mixed answer, however, to inform and entertain was the main purpose. And as well as the questionnaires, I used my findings from my textual analysis of real magazines already on the market to find out what sort of house style and colourings I should have used. I did this to find out how to get the colours to attract the audience and found out what catches the audience's eye, like special offers or freebies for example, and I feel I did all of this in my magazine. I also used a red boost with the white text on it to promote the freebies. This was in keeping with my house style and also stood out on the page for the audience to see clearly. I also needed to know how to address the audience, so I read the double page spreads that I textually analysed and found out that a lot of colloquialisms and slang was used. For example, in the 50 Cent and Floyd Mayweather Jr. issue of XXL, the heading of the double page spread article used the word crew, which is a colloquialism in relation to the hip hop genre. So in my magazine I use colloquialisms such as MC and rapper, which are also colloquialisms related to the hip hop genre of music, and I use these features to address my audience. When creating my product, I used 3 types of new technology. They were Photoshop, WordPress and the Apple Macs. I was already aware of the basics of Photoshop, such as layers and creating text on it, so I was comfortable when starting. But throughout the project I was made aware of new aspects that I didn't know about, such as the Magic Wand tool, which helped cut out parts of layers I didn't want. This was a big help when making my magazine. I also found out how to pick an exact colour that you want that you'd already used before, which was another great help when creating my house style of the different pages of my magazine. I had never used WordPress before, so I was thankful that you could upload things to it anywhere and how simple it was to use. I found it a lot easier to upload posts to it instead of handing in pieces of paper, and it was a lot clearer to use than I expected. I learnt a lot of things on WordPress, for example, that you have to tick your name in the categories section before you upload a post, so that everyone knows it's yours and it doesn't end up uncategorised. However, there are a few downsides to WordPress. For example, as it's online storage, if the website had crashed, all my work would be gone.
I use Apple products a lot and I'm familiar with them, so using an Apple iMac was fairly simple as I was aware of almost everything in the Mac itself. However, I'd never used Photoshop on an iMac before. I was thankful of how easy and clear it was to use, such as its Finder and the print screening tool. I feel that iMac is a lot easier to use than a normal PC, not only for the obvious reasons of its up-to-date tech, but some of the smaller uses I found better than a PC, such as its screenshot tool where you can drag around what you want to screenshot or print screen the whole screen. This feature was used when uploading images to the WordPress blog. My preliminary task was to create a college magazine, and looking back at it, I don't think it was anywhere near the standard of my final hip-hop magazine. I feel that there is a lot of dead space on my preliminary project on both the front cover and the contents page, and that would be my main criticism of it. As well as this, there are a lot of simple errors that I made on it, such as placing the cover lines over the main image, which you should never do. The spacing between the words are bad, especially on the main cover line, and the main image is poor quality, and even how I cut the image out on Photoshop is poor quality. What I've learnt from the preliminary task to the making of my hip-hop magazine is that, for one, the house style has to be the same, which it isn't in my college magazine, but is in my real music one. This is used to give the magazine some form of identity and makes the appearance of the magazine a lot better. Another reason that my music magazine looks a lot more professional than my preliminary task is that all the images are taken with high quality cameras that aren't blurry like they are on my college magazine. This is a big factor for making a good magazine, as the reader likes to see good quality images that stand. Another feature that I feel stands out on my real magazine that makes it a lot better than my preliminary one is the typography on the pages, especially on the front cover and contents page of my actual hip hop magazine, like in the cover lines and the masthead.